An airport can now understand exactly where the drone are coming from. It can shift flights to different runways without closing the airport, just by knowing where the drone is exactly and not in a general manner. And it can also alert local law enforcement to apprehend the operator.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 221. What is the key component of a reliable UTM system? If you ask today's guest, he would say it's the ability to accurately detect and track drone activity. Avner Turniansky is Vice President of Strategy at Vorpal, an Israeli manufacturer of signal analysis products and solutions for drone detection, geolocation, tracking, and mitigation. Before joining Vorpal, Avner has, for the last 15 years, carried out various senior management roles with several startup companies. He is a signal intelligence specialist, having served a lengthy career with Israel's prestigious Unit 8200, with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. In this edition of the Drone Radio Show, Avner gives us some insights into Vorpal's signal technology and how it can detect, track, and monitor drone activity with a high degree of precision. But before we hear from Avner, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Now you have the option of making a one-time donation in any amount by going to droneradioshow.com/donate. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. And if you'd like to make a monthly contribution, you can still go to patreon.com/droneradioshow. So let's find out how one company is working towards creating an effective drone tracking system with Avner Turniansky of Vorpal. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Avner to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Avner Turniansky. I'm VP Strategy at Vorpal. Vorpal is a privately owned company operating out of Israel. We currently have 12 full-time employees. We've been operating since 2016. And our focus is drone detection, geolocation, and tracking. We provide comprehensive drone situational awareness for anybody or any entity, any customer who's interested in that.
Avner, how long has the company been in business?
The company started operating on counter-drone technologies in 2016, but in a previous incarnation, we did also general signal processing solutions and other geolocation solutions. So what we brought to the table here was previous experience in fields which are relevant for drone RF-based detection.
What type of service does Vorpal provide? Is it a solution, contracting, or a consulting service?
No, so today we've completely stopped anything to do with consulting or contracting, and we're now dedicated only to providing a solution called Vigilair, which is our drone monitoring solution.
What markets are you targeting with the service?
We're targeting multiple verticals, but basically anybody whose security interests extend into the third dimension is relevant. So we're talking definitely about aviation and airports, as entities who are very interested to know which and what drones are flying overhead for them. You can extend that to any type of critical infrastructure, critical national infrastructure, oil and gas, power generation, nuclear facilities, high-profile facilities, secure sites, anybody who's finding in the recent years that the physical fences are good for 2D problems, but the problem is being extended into 3D. So we're talking about, let's say, the second vertical of customers would be law enforcement organizations and government organizations who are interested to know which and what drones are flying overhead. And of course, military are also relevant customers. And all these, which I mentioned, are, let's say, short-range market for the next 2 or 3 years or more, but that's already an active market. And the focus is, so to speak, security and safety. But there is a second-tier market, which will probably appear in about 3 to 5 years, which is UTM.
How does your technology roll into UTM?
So UTM, if you look at what's being developed and what's being organized, coordinated, agreed upon, you'll see that most UTM solutions deal with the general management of the airspace. And the implicit or the explicit assumption sometimes is that everybody's cooperative. The drones are cooperative, everybody's registering their drones, all the drones are mechanically operating correctly, and everything is fine. But in reality, what certainly should be expected and needs to be addressed is that some drones won't be cooperative. Some drones will have difficulties, technical difficulties, or GPS reception difficulties, or navigation difficulties. And in these cases, you need some sort of a fail-safe system for additional information to enable the UTM providers to really manage the airspace with some sort of enforcement capabilities that will enable them to handle unexpected occurrences, like a faulty drone, like somebody who's not cooperative, like somebody who hasn't registered his drone and is now flying in a zone which is considered a flight corridor with other drones who did register. So there will be a need for additional sources of information to enable better real-time management of the UTM airspace. And that's where we come in, because we can provide real-time information that's not dependent on drone cooperation.
To give us some context, what can you tell us about the issue of drone incursions? Should the average person be concerned about it?
I think it shouldn't be overhyped, but there is an issue. There is a real issue in the sense that what was once the realm of governments only or militaries is now in the hands of private people, of private citizens, because now you can go to a toy store and for $1,500 or $2,000 get a really good drone, which gives you 30 minutes of flight time, around 50 or 60 miles per hour top speed, about 4 miles top altitude. And that's something you can work with. You can work with for, good recreational purposes and just have good and decent fun, or run a completely legitimate business. But you can also do, as always, when new technology appears, you can also do some bad stuff with it. So it's actually has become sort of a poor man's solution for terror attacks, for covert surveillance, for anything which is less legal than expected. And with prices going down and performance going up, I think drones are becoming a real issue. In addition, the whole market drone, the legitimate market drone, is quickly expanding. So it's becoming a drone management, drone monitoring, and drone administration, so to speak, issue as well. You don't necessarily have to have bad guys in the equations. You just need the regular development of the drone market to create a demand for drone monitoring services.
Can you give us an idea of what comprises the system?
Our system, Vigilaire, is comprised of 46 sensors deployed in as close as possible to a perfect polygon, a perfect square, a perfect pentagon, or a perfect hexagon, and a backend server. The sensors actually listen out for radio frequency signals, which are being emitted by both the drone and the operator. So we're looking for the command and control link and the telemetry information and the video feed that are flowing between drone and drone operator. The system has its own library of drone, so to speak, drone radio frequency signatures. Once we detect a drone signal and an operator signal, we immediately start a geolocation process, which provides us with an accurate location of where both the drone and the operator are located at that time. Once we have a geolocation, we continue the geolocation process over time. So for the drone, if the drone is on the move, we generate a drone track. And even if the operator is on the move in a moving vehicle or just walking about to the controller, we can also generate an operator track. So what you get as a customer, what you get as a user, is something that looks similar to a radar or an aerial awareness picture, but it is radio frequency based and generated. And what we're following are not commercial aircraft, but rather commercial drones.
So you're able to track the operator as well?
Yeah, that's probably one of our strong points, being based on radio frequency technologies, that we can provide actionable information regarding the operator. Talking to law enforcement guys, many times they're not really interested in the drone. The drone is a commercial drone. It has a flying lifespan of 30 to 35 minutes. So it's going to be out of the sky sometime, but what they're after mostly are actually the operators. They want to get to the problem at the source, and the source is the operator. It's not the drone itself. So being able to provide actionable information on where the operator is definitely a large plus for Vigilair.
Is that a service that's unique to Vorpal?
There are other companies that provide either as a standalone solution or integrated as part of a sensor array that provide radio frequency-based sensing, detection, or geolocation, or both. But for the radio frequency engineers among us, is a tricky field, meaning the equations are known, the basic technologies are known. It's very hard to perfect to a working system in actual environmental conditions. So it's easy to create, or it's relatively easy to do a geolocation in a flat desert that's uninhabited with no major interruptions, but it's exceedingly and amazingly difficult to do the same thing in a dense urban environment of a large city with a local radio frequency environment and the problematics of large buildings and urban canyons. It's a totally different story, and being able to do it professionally, consistently, with a low number or even zero number of false positives and false alarms, I think that's where we stand out.
How accurate is your system?
Our current accuracy is in the low tens of meters over ranges of several kilometers. So we'll be deploying our sensors in an urban environment about a mile apart, a mile or a mile and a half apart. In rural environments, we've reached even 3 or 4 miles apart. And we'll be detecting drones and geolocating them with an accuracy of several low tens of feet. So that's probably as accurate as it gets out there in the market today.
Can you describe for us how it works?
The exact flavor of technology that we use for geolocation is called TDOA, time difference of arrival. It's based on comparing the timing of the same signal emanating from the same drone or the same controller and reaching the different sensors. From the different in the timing arrival, we can back calculate the location of the drone. It's considered a very exact and accurate system, but it's very, very difficult to realize in real field conditions. What we've done is take TDOA, the basic TDOA technology, and power it up with some of our in-house proprietary filtering and algorithmic enhancements. And we've been able to reach a very, very powerful geolocation and tracking accuracy based on TDOA, which is not an easy feat.
Do the sensors have to be placed within a minimum distance of the site or within the polygon?
We prefer them to be, let's say, at least half a mile apart. So we're not good for extremely small sites. There will be a hit on our accuracy, not on our detection accuracy, but on our geolocation accuracy. But in most cases, we've actually never come across a case where we couldn't deploy, reasonable distances of half a mile or a mile to protect a reasonable site. Usually, if the site is smaller than that, it's not interesting enough or not important enough.
Is that the distance from the sensor to the site?
That's between sensors. So we usually like to place sensors at least half a mile apart. But, to cut costs and have a low TCO, we usually deploy, as I mentioned, I think, in urban environments about a mile or a mile and a half apart, and in rural environments, 3 even or 4 miles apart, easy. So we still get the same accuracies and the excellent detection sensitivity that I mentioned.
How big are these sensors? Are they easy to place and install? And I'm primarily thinking about potential concerns if they happen to fall on public right-of-ways.
The sensors are quite small. We've fitted them on roofs, on lighting poles, on telephone poles or antennas, masts. They're quite easy to deploy, very quick and easy to install, and they're about the size of a bread box. So it's not a problem in that sense. What we have seen with some customers is we've been asked more than once to tune the sensitivity a bit down because we're getting drone signals which were at distances and locations which were outside the scope of interest of our clients.
Can the system differentiate between various models of a drone?
Our solution, we don't decode or demodulate the drone signals because that would be a violation of privacy and cyber laws. Everything we do is based on RF signatures and RF waveforms. So what we see is limited to the information we can collect on on the transceiver or the modem models that the drones are carrying. So we can differentiate between different drone signals and drone models based on their different modems. So if two drone models are carrying the exact same modem, we won't be able to differentiate between them. Not with our basic system. Where the regulatory issues are of no concern, we can also differentiate more in depth. We can, track specific drones. Yeah.
And so obviously for military clients, you can be much more precise.
Yeah, and there we can probably provide, wing numbers or, unique identities. So you'll know the exact model or the exact wing number or serial number of a drone. That's also doable. But that won't be in the civilian version.
Has there been any real-world testing that you can share with us?
We've done multiple tests here in Israel, in Tel Aviv, which is definitely a dense urban environment. We've done a large metropolitan center in the U.S., probably one of the largest ones. We've done some activities in Singapore City, for example, and other large major cities in Europe. So it's not necessarily the exact identity of the city, but once we're talking about an area that has high-rise buildings of tens of stories and a population of several million people, which usually comes integrated with tens of thousands of wireless access points, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of mobile phones with their Wi-Fi transceivers open, the radio environment immediately becomes totally different and much more challenging.
When talking to clients, what do you say about what the system will do?
First of all, it would probably make them much more informed so that they can handle an event in a much more intelligent manner, because they will know what is happening. They will understand that not the general statements that some other solutions provide, like there is a drone in the air, or there is a drone at an unknown distance at the northern sector. We can provide highly accurate drone tracks and operated geolocations. So an airport with our system can now understand exactly where the drones or drone are coming from. It can shift flights to different runways without closing the airport, just by knowing where the drone is exactly and not in a general manner. And it can also alert local law enforcement to apprehend the operator. So the result or the outcome of such an event is much more positive for the customer, because it's based on much more actionable knowledge of what really is happening, and not just a general get into an alert mode. Get into an alert mode and do what? Our system provides them with the right information to make correct decisions on how to act to mitigate the drone threat in an optimal manner.
How is Vigilair deployed or set up at the client site? Is it a standalone or integrated into the client's operation?
We have different models of how we deploy. The system can be sold as a full system to a specific customer, and then the customer owns that system. Or it can be deployed over a larger area with a partner of ours, such as a large mobile operator. And then the information generated by the system can be sold to any company within that network's footprint. Now, the output of the system is basically a user interface, a graphic user interface with a GIS layer showing you the local environment, the local terrain, and the local buildings. And on it are superimposed the drone tracks, drone geolocations, and operated geolocation. Now, that graphical user interface is accessible over a web browser. So you can see it from a desktop, a laptop, a mobile device. You can be moving about in the area that's to be protected with that real-time image, enabling you to chase the operator or to chase the drone in real time with a mitigation method that is more localized, more surgical, with less environmental and less surrounding implications. So if you want to jam the drone, for example, you can do it with a relatively low power jamming gun and not with a centralized, high-powered jamming system, which will have other implications on local aviation and local navigation and local synchronization of other systems, which is something you'd probably want to avoid.
Where has it recently been deployed, and what have been the results?
Probably one of our latest events was the Eurovision Song Contest, which is considered one of the largest, if not the largest, music events worldwide, where you have participants from all over the European Union and some additional exotic places like Australia meeting once a year for a song contest, which actually takes place over, I think, 3 consecutive nights, sort of a semifinals and then a final night and a pre-event and a post-event large party. So it's about a week of super hyped Eurovision Song Contest. This year it took place in Israel, and we were working with the Israeli police, providing them with drone information. And actually, they were very happy with the information they received, and were able to actually apprehend both drones and operators in appreciable quantities.
How many drones were detected?
I'd say a few low dozens of drone events and activities.
Were these mostly people trying to get a glimpse of what was going on?
Yeah, it's mostly careless and clueless categories, meaning people who didn't know that there was a no-fly zone in effect, just trying to catch a local video footage of an exotic large event. It was a good tour de force, so to speak, showing that if anybody had malintentions, we would still be showing up very nicely where the drones were, where the operators were.
I've been reading a lot about swarm technology and its positive uses, say like the drone light shows. But as we know, anything that is used for good can also be used for not so good applications. Does swarm technology offer any additional challenges?
I think swarm technology mainly has the potential to compound the overall effect. Instead of a single drone, you get multiple drones, and they're sort of acting in unison, and they're coordinated. So if you're trying to achieve something bad with a drone, you'd probably achieve better or wider results with a swarm. But as far as detection or monitoring, for us, it's quite a similar challenge. In most swarms that we know about, there are some sort of swarm leaders. Some of the drones are just followers, and some of the drones are the managerial level who are being remotely operated, which the other drones are mostly following short range. So we're still tracking the leaders, and for us, the overall activity would seem quite the same, which I'd say probably with a few drones quite close to each other. Since we can separate and can geolocate with high accuracy, the fact that we're getting several drones close by in a swarm, that's not a major issue for us. We'll still be tracking the swarm as a whole. We just might not be able to provide comprehensive information on how many drones are there, because some of the drones are only operating on short range, follow the leader sort of activity. So that won't be visible to us.
Let's talk more about UTM. As you say, we're several years out from seeing UTM in operation. What is Vorpal doing to position itself as a go-to choice by UTM decision makers?
These days, we're mostly trying to connect and to partner with UTM service providers who will be providing sort of services that should be similar to what navigation service providers, aviation navigation service providers are providing for commercial aviation these days. Some entities will have to provide the same kind of services for the drone world, for the drone UTM airspace. At this point in time, we're mostly trying to team up with these companies who are gearing to become the drone UTM providers and operators, and hook up with them to provide the fail-safe and enforcement layer, which will enable monitoring of drones in the UTM airspace, sometimes as a second sensor, sometimes as a primary sensor, but mostly or becoming highly relevant in cases where the drone is either uncooperative or malfunctioning, or in cases where the drone doesn't know its own location, doesn't receive a GPS signal correctly, is being spoofed by a spoofed GPS signal. In all of these cases, Vigile can provide a unique sensing and tracking capability which will enable a UTM operator to correct an event and manage an event correctly in order to prevent collisions, accidents, fallouts, etc.
How do you see the UTM monitoring sector shaping up? Is it starting to coalesce around a few stakeholders? Or is it still like the Wild West, where everyone is trying to make their voice known?
I think it's beginning to coalesce. Without mentioning names, I think in the U.S. is, I think, far ahead on the UTM vision and UTM realization. It's far ahead than Europe. And I think in the U.S., if you Google a bit and follow the news for 2 or 3 months, you can easily identify the UTM leaders, or at least who are currently the leaders. The whole UTM process will take a few appreciable years. We're talking, 3 to 5 to 8 years range for different levels of development of the UTM airspace. So we're talking about something which is long range. So, companies can go up and can go down. But I think you can probably see these days probably in the range of 5 to 10 major providers sort of, crystallizing out of the noise.
What challenges do you see in the area of drone detection?
I think one challenge which still needs to be addressed in a comprehensive manner is the regulatory framework for drones, for drone monitoring, for drone enforcement, for drone-related law enforcement capabilities, activities, authorizations. I think the regulatory frameworks are still a little bit behind what's already happening out there, meaning, for example, that law enforcement agencies, which are not federal agencies these days, have no authority against drones. They cannot undertake any mitigation activities whatsoever. That can only be done today in the U.S. by the federal level. And that's probably something which will have to be addressed by an updated regulatory framework. So that's probably one challenge. Another challenge, which is also regulatory and legal, is the enablement of additional technologies which will make UTM easier to manage, like remote ID, which the FAA is already working on, and probably other technologies of detect and avoid and so on, which will make the UTM airspace easier to manage and more resembling, let's say, the commercial aviation environment of today, so as to pick up the slack which emanates from the fact that, all those flying systems out there will not be manned. There's certainly a lot of regulatory and technological challenges to realize UTM safely.
What sort of opportunities do you see for Vorpal in responding to those challenges?
I think we're sort of riding on the wave of drone adoption and UTM realization. So drones are here. I think they're here to stay. And I think drones are doing wonderful things for technology and business and commerce. But drones need to be managed. Drones need to be watched. And there is a safety concern, a safety and security concern that is generated by drones being a 3D entity and not a two-dimensional entity. So it changes a little bit the paradigm of security and safety. And as a company, I think the horizon is good for us, or the future is good for us, because there will definitely be a real need to provide actionable intelligence and security capabilities and monitoring capabilities that are 3D related, that are drone focused, and that can enable the safe realization of the drone promise. So I think for us, business is expected to be very good in the next few years.
Avner, how long have you been with Vorpal?
Personally, I joined Vorpal just over a year ago. Before that, I was doing other Israeli startups and high-tech companies probably for the last 15 years. And before that, I was in the Israeli military.
Compared to your previous work with startups, what makes this engagement with Vorpal different?
Basic difference is that we have a very powerful technology that is ours, and that we've consistently seen it perform better than other solutions in the most demanding environments. So it's always good to be, there are different models and different types of startups, but when the core technology and the core capability is really outstanding, all the rest comes easy with the territory.
And for my final question, Avner, what message would you like to leave about technology and the role that Vorpal hopes to play in the drone industry? There's
a lot of hype regarding drones. And as usual with new technologies, everybody thinks that they will be implemented much faster than they really are. If you remember, the original Amazon promise for drone delivery was more than 5 years ago, and they were stating that they would do it within 5 years, and they haven't. They're just now starting to make the first real steps in that direction. So we're talking about probably longer processes than publicized on one hand, but on the other hand, as usual with new technologies, there's a very heavy momentum in what's happening in the drone world these days. So there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of new businesses, a lot of new implementations and usages of drones. It comes with some sort of inherent risk for security and safety, and that's, I think, where we kick in as somebody who can provide unique, actionable information to mitigate those risks and assist in realizing this opportunity, this large opportunity of drones.
That's it for episode 221 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Avner Turniansky of Vorpal. I want to thank Avner for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Vorpal and its Vigilaire technology, or want to connect with Avner, check out the webpage at vorpal-corp.com. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the costs of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate or patreon.com/droneradioshow. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.